Greetings and well met. Today, we will be taking a look at the words of Cordelion as they guide us through the Dev Diary 150. Considering this fine paradoxian has worked exclusively and tirelessly on the new start date and the corresponding bookmarks, I think we should listen carefully to their words. So, by the grace of the Emperor, let us commence. Let's start with the obvious question that I know some of you have been asking. Why choose 1178 specifically? That's a great and very natural question. Unlike our pre-existing start dates of 1066 or 867, 1178 isn't well known for any major, paradigm-altering historical events. But there are a few key factors that weighted the scales in its favor. One of the first things we look at when adding something like a new start date is who would be alive and interesting and playable at that time. We want to give you as many options for worthy historical figures as possible. This part of the process involves a little bit of back and forth at first. Every time you move the year forward or backward, you gain some figures and lose others. So we have to decide whom we can't live without and whom we're willing to consider an acceptable, though unfortunate, sacrifice. We knew, for example, that we wanted to have the Crusader states, and particularly Jerusalem, under Baldwin IV, which gives you a preliminary range of 1174 to 1185 for his reign. Then we thought it could also be good to have Heinrich the Lion as the Duke of Saxony, and a rival and counterweight to the Holy Roman Emperor Friedrich Barbarossa, which would require a year before 1180 or 1181 when Heinrich was deposed. Just imagine doing this with a few more names and you should have a reasonably solid picture of the calculus involved. However, that's not to say that this was our sole consideration, although it certainly accounted for a healthy amount of the discussion. Another factor that heavily influenced our choice was that we wanted to make sure that any new start date would be in a good position to integrate not only the new mechanics being introduced in Roads to Power, but also a wide range of components of potential future expansions going forward, whatever they may be. No matter whether it's the allied city-states of Lombard League asserting their independence from imperial suzerainty in northern Italy, or the Iron Men marching eastward to wage holy war at the urging of the Men of the Cloth, or a young man of as yet untapped potential named Temujin, beginning to make a name for himself on the steppes. We will relentlessly and enthusiastically take advantage of everything 1178 brings to the table whenever and wherever the opportunity occurs. And please don't take that as an indication of any specific plans for future expansions, or the order in which they may or may not appear. I've merely highlighted a few relevant aspects that I personally find compelling, and take it instead as a declaration of our intent to make sure that 1178 remains a vital, thriving, fully integrated, and fun part of your Crusader Kings gameplay experience from here on out. Hopefully, this has given you a bit more insight into the logic behind our choice of 1178. It's perfectly alright if you still have more questions. In fact, I hope you do, because next we're going to delve much deeper into the bookmarks themselves. Now, since Roads to Power is the expansion introducing administrative government, let's take a look at Hall of the Empire first. For those of you who may be unfamiliar with the particulars of this era, the Byzantine Empire is presently enjoying a resurgence under the adroit rule of the aging Basileus Manuel Komnenos, but the specter of his cousin, Andronikos, an ambitious and reckless adventurer of preternatural charm, looms forebodingly over the prospects of Manuel's underage son and heir, young Alexios. Furthermore, the Byzantines have suffered a recent blow to their aspirations of reclaiming the Anatolian interior. Defeat at the Battle of Myrocephalon at the hands of the Seljuk Sultan of Rum, Kilij Arslan II, whose name means sword lion for the etymologically curious. The great-grandson of Suleiman ibn Gultamish, the Sultanate's founder, Kilij Arslan has reigned ably in both war and peace thus far, but an abundance of potential successors, no less than 11 sons, may bode poorly for the Sultanate's future stability. A more auspicious future may be in store for the Princess Tamar Bagratuni, the eldest daughter of King Georgi III of Georgia, and another one of those historical figures who was an influencing factor on the start date. 1178 was the year her father officially confirmed her as his successor, after he put down the rebellion of the Orbelli family. Historically, her subsequent rule over Georgia marked her as one of its greatest rulers. To quote a chronicle of her reign, the life of Tamar, the great queen of queens, the entire world was full of her praise, and every language in which her name was pronounced exalted her. Governing along the Wallachian frontier of the Byzantine Empire, you'll find Ioannis Katakouzenos. According to Nikitas Shonet's Historia, a man, huge in size and most courageous of heart, and with a booming voice. However, the historian goes on to add that Katakouzenos' extensive military experience, his arrogance and impetuosity resulted in failure more often than success. As a bit of an interesting genealogical trivia, the 14th century Byzantine Empire of the same name descended from a cousin of Ioannis. The early genealogy of the Pelagolios is more than a little Byzantine, pardon the pun, and so I'll clarify that our Alexos Pelagolios, governor of Bulgaria, is the Alexo Pelagolios who was the grandfather of the future emperor Michael VIII Pelagolios, and not his younger cousin of the same name. The Byzantines were not renowned for their innovative choice in names, who is historically best known for his association with the Emperor Alexios III Angelos. And lastly, we have Andronicus Angelos governing in Epirus, where his illegitimate nephew Michael will one day establish an independent despotate. Cousin to the Vassalos Manuel and grandson of Alexios Komnenos himself, and among whose sons are the future emperors Alexios III, mentioned previously, and Isakios II Angelos. Although exhibiting an authentically Byzantine inconsistency in what surname they prefer to use, the Angeloi are a sizable family by contemporary standards and well placed to stack the empire's office with their kindred. Before we get into detail on Swords of Faith, I do want to be transparent up front that an overhaul for Crusades themselves is not a component of this expansion. Something of that magnitude and significance would need, and deserve, more than would be possible as second billing in an expansion with a very different mechanical focus. We know it's important to you, so it's important to us that we make sure what we deliver meets or exceeds your expectations. Now, to many of you, I expect some of the names in this bookmark will seem a good deal more familiar, in large part due to Ridley Scott's Kingdom of Heaven, and of course the CK3 mod of the same name. Though set a few years earlier than the events adapted by the film, here too the leprous Baudouin IV rules the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem with immense dignity and dedication despite his dreadful affliction. Although our historical Balin de Bellin is a baron from the beginning, not a blacksmith. Given the nature of his malady, particular attention must be paid to his heir, his elder sister Sibylla, who is historically, and conveniently for us, between husbands in this particular year. Although, historically, Baudouin would be succeeded by Sibylla's son, also named Baudouin, before Sibylla herself, at this point she was still being treated as the presumptive successor over the newborn infant. In addition, while bouncing baby Baudouin takes after his father's dynasty at the start of the game, worry not, as Sibylla, you'll get an event shortly to let you determine which side of his parentage he ought to take after. Rounding out the Jerusalemite cast is Raymond de Toulouse, son of a murdered father, Nizari assassins happened, and brother to a spurned sister. Vesalius Manuel happened, a regent of the kingdom during Baudouin IV's minority who had previously endured nearly a decade of captivity in a Zengid prison, the ruler of the county of Tripoli, the future of his lands inextricably intertwined with that of the Kingdom of Jerusalem itself. And, of course, what mention of Jerusalem could be made without acknowledging the exceptional character of Salah ad-Din Yusuf, the last vizier to the Fatimid caliphs, and the first Ayyubid Sultan of Egypt? Of all our bookmark characters in this start date, he perhaps requires the least introduction. His victory over the Crusaders at the Battle of Hattin and the reconquest of Jerusalem in 1187 would soon lead to the launch of the famous Third Crusade in response. As an additional point of interest, I'd like to mention that we've made some slight adjustments to how names are structured, in that Salah ad-Din, his famous honorific, meaning righteousness of the faith, is now a prefix nickname. Previously, many such honorifics were treated as components of given names and could be inherited as such. And so, in the interest of accuracy and better representation, we've gone through and reassigned a great many of them as historical nicknames instead. Segueing into our next bookmark character, Muzaffar ad-Din Gokbori is one of the preeminent military commanders in service to the Zengids, as was his father before him. Deposed and exiled from his fief in Erbil in favor of his younger brother, Gokbori presently rules in Harran, but historically would go on to betray the Zengids and join forces with Salah ad-Din, even playing a key role at the Battle of Hattin to reclaim his patrimony, which he ruled prosperously until his death on the eve of the Mongol invasions. Truly a man with an excellent sense of timing. Last but certainly not least is Levon, younger brother to Ropin III, ruler of Armenian Cilicia. Historically, Ropin III is remembered as a kind and humane ruler, but one of retiring character who abdicated in Levon's favor. Perhaps his noblest deed of all for Levon would be crowned the first true king of Armenian Cilicia and thoroughly earn the appellation Metzigorsk, which is commonly translated as the Magnificent or the Great, but can also be read as the Thaumaturge, in the sense of one who performs marvels. It's been an immense personal pleasure to play a part in bringing 1178 to fruition, and I truly hope that you've enjoyed today's look at our new start date. Because we're not done just yet. You see, my mandate is to tell you all about the new start date, and that just means I have no alternative but to tell you all about the other interesting parts of it, doesn't it? King Henry II of England has imprisoned his wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine, for inciting his sons against him in a significantly more literal form of teenage rebellion than is typically meant by the term. Among said sons is the athletic 12th century tournament celebrity Henry, called the Young King for having been crowned during his father's reign, Leonine Richard, Smooth-tongued Geoffrey, and young John, who would go on to enjoy such harmonious relations with his vassals during his reign that they enthusiastically invited the future King of France to replace him. In this period, the French are ruled by King Louis VII, the former husband of Eleanor of Aquitaine, and perhaps better known as the younger than the young at this particular stage in his life. Louis's eldest daughter is married to one of his preeminent vassals, Henry the Liberal, ruler of Champagne, who contributed greatly to the expansion of the famous and prosperous Champagne fairs. Meanwhile, in the south, the heretical Cathar creed has taken hold in the lands of Raymond of Toulouse, which would soon lead to the Albigensian Crusade. The formidable Hohenstaufen Holy Roman Emperor Friedrich Barbarossa, Redbeard after the color of his, well, you get the idea, is rivaled within his realm only by Heinrich the Lion, Duke over both Saxony and Bavaria. The feud between their families gave rise to the enduring labels Guelph, after Heinrich's House of Welf, and Ghibelline, after the Hohenstaufen castle of Weiblingen. Within the empire, I'd like to draw your particular attention to Berthold von Andechs, patriarch of an interesting and mildly obscure family that rose high in both the empire and Hungary, and then burned out and went extinct within only a few generations. Some 50 years past, a young Alfonso the Conqueror knighted himself on Pentecost in the Cathedral of Zamora, assembled a host beneath the banner of rebellion, and proceeded to emancipate himself from his mother and her Galician lover in a near legendary fashion, triumphing over them in the Battle of Salmamedi. For anyone else, this might have been enough adventure for a lifetime, but for Alfonso, this was only the prologue. He would soon become the first and founding king of Portugal. Now, in his twilight years, Alfonso has largely handed over management of the kingdom's affairs to his favorite daughter, Teresa, named, curiously, after his mother. Sharing the name of the Portuguese monarch are Alphonse the Troubadour, King of Aragon, and Alfonso VIII, King of Castile. Of the two, the former has managed to expand his realm to encompass territories well beyond the Pyrenees, possessing lands of his own in the south of France, as well as having ceded his brother in Provence. Although said brother would soon be murdered after embroiling himself in a war with the lords of Fonda. It is the latter Alfonso, however, who will earn enduring fame as the future victor over the Almohad army at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa. Jumping now to another corner of the map, the historically last of the Seljuk sultans of Persia, Togrul, is still a child, with the true power in the realm resting in the hands of Jahan Pahlavan Mohammed, the Ildiguzid Atabeg of Azerbaijan, subjugator of rebellious princes and emirs, and one of my personal favorites among the cast of this start date. His honorific, incidentally, can be translated variously as Hero of the World or World Champion. Immediately east of the dwindling Seljuk state is the realm of the Ghurids, where power is presently split between Muhammad of Ghor and his older brother, who is technically also Muhammad of Ghor. They share a given name. Of the two, the younger is the more famous, and his exploits into India would ultimately give rise to the Delhi Sultanate only a few decades later. Standing in opposition to the Ghurids is Prithviraj Chauhan III, whose resistance against the foreign invaders earned him a legendary reputation and has perhaps had more films made about him than anyone else in this list. Lastly, even further to the east, as mentioned earlier, you'll find a young man named Temujin Borjigin, who will soon earn himself another appellation, one to make all the world tremble, Genghis Khan. Need I say more? The list of those I've named is by no means exhaustive. I could easily name a good dozen more, and don't even get me started on Montserrat. But if I start thinking of more names, we really will be here all day, and I fully expect you'll turn up countless more interesting figures to play as or against. However, there is still one more thing the team would like to share with you today, and it's something we're all pretty happy about too. Before we go, also coming with a free update is a small but oft-requested quality of life improvement. Message settings. You will now be able to customize the appearance of a variety of common interface messages to your heart's desire. Messages are now sorted into filter groups. How each group should appear is now up to you, as either a tried and true toast message, banner message that displays near the top of the screen, a familiar feed message, that is, messages that appear in the notification feed at the bottom right side of the screen, a pop-up window, a new addition, or simply be disabled entirely. As you might have noticed, it is also possible per filter group to set whether the game should automatically be paused as it appears regardless of its display type. Note, certain filter groups, integrals in giving the player information about the game state or the outcomes of their actions, cannot be disabled. This is possible thanks to a new and fully moddable database of message filter types that may be freely edited or expanded upon, adding new types for more granularly or mod-specific needs. In the last two dev diaries, we picked up on the idea that some of you would be interested in giving your vassals orders. And after thinking about it, we came to the conclusion that it's not only a sound suggestion, but one that can help reinforce the difference that administrative realms has over other government forms. You will now be able to give directives to your vassals, presuming that they respect you. Directives are either given from the character interaction menu or via the Vassals tab in My Realm, the latter having the benefit of showing you the current directive. All government types can issue directives to their vassals. In the picture, it's the Holy Roman Emperor doing it. As you can tell from the requirements, it's not too easy to make them follow your orders. You have to work your way to a high level of crown authority, pursue specific lifestyles, or gain significant opinions with them. If you no longer fulfill this trigger, they will not follow your directive until you regain their trust. Directives are inherited, so you do not need to worry about setting them again as your vassals die. Of course, if you're administrative, then following the directives you set is simply your vassal's job. They will only ever refuse your directives if they are your rival, but otherwise, you're free to set any directive you wish. They're fully baked into the administrative UIs to maximize visibility. Oh, and administrative also has access to 3 more directives: improve development, boost men-at-arms, and recruit men-at-arms, all significantly more powerful than the default set. In previous dev diaries, we gathered some feedback regarding the upcoming Choose a New Destiny feature, where it seemed as if a popular addition would be to add a random mode. If you're not interested in any of the 3 options, you can now choose to let the die of fate determine your destiny for you. We based the choices on what we could gather were popular fantasies and added some extra for good measure. Some restrictions still apply, such as being of your dynasty and keeping the difficulty reasonable. Anything above extremely hard is essentially a game over situation. It's still possible to add further categories, so if you feel like we've missed something, feel free to give some feedback. And that's everything for today. I sincerely thank you for all your time and attention. I hope that you found today's dev diary interesting and that you're looking forward to Rose to Power as much as I am, and especially 1178, I say with a deep and profound personal and professional bias. So thanks for listening, and when we come back, we'll be showing off another major feature that I think you'll find very intriguing: Landless Adventurers. Until then, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them below.